Okay, so this is the third lecture, structure. This is the first of the technical lectures about writing an academic paper. Structure is the first of these lectures because it is the most important thing to master. When I think of structure in a paper, I think of a boat because the game is to create the best, most buoyant structure possible to send your ideas from your mind to the mind of your reader. So in other words, structure is the framework by which you locomote your ideas from your mind to that of another person. There are two main steps to creating structure. And my, preference is to start with a brainstorm and follow up with an outline. It doesn't really matter what order you do these steps in, but you have to do both of them at some point. Okay, step one to me is the brainstorm. That means you throw your ideas on the paper. You pick up whatever facts, whatever evidence you think is salient from the material that you've had to read or watch, and then you create an outline with it. So how does that look? Step one, brainstorm. That means getting your ideas onto the paper, okay? I do this on paper. I'm a visual person and I need to write it down. I know people who are able to do this in their head and who are able to subsequently write the paper and they do it very well. I don't recommend that you do this unless you know for a fact that you're one of those people. What's the point of creating a brainstorm? Okay, you create a brainstorm because it's from your ideas and it's from your observations that you're going to be able to pick what structure you're going to use for your paper. Now, there are two main structures in academic writing. I call them the kick out an essay in no time structures. Why are they good? Because they follow convention. Two, they facilitate composition. Once you're used to these structures, writing a paper becomes much more easy because you don't actually have to decide every time you write a paper what it's going to look like, how you're going to structure the information. You're going to do it the same every single time. Third, it helps to organize thinking. These two structures are the following. Either you start with a thesis statement, that's basically your opinion or your point of view, and you justify it. 1, 2, 3. You find arguments to support your point of view, and then you conclude, basically, that you were right. It's great. The second structure is slightly more complicated and arguably more sophisticated. In this case, you start with a thesis statement, that's your point of view, but then you follow it up with evidence that on one hand justifies your point of view and on the other hand rebuts it. Okay, and when you have this structure, your job is to create a synthesis. So you say, well, my opinion was this in the beginning, but I found evidence to support that opinion, and I found evidence to contradict that opinion. And now I've come up with a new opinion, the synthesis. And you conclude that your new opinion is the best opinion to account for all of the evidence that you were able to find. Now, what you do is that you take your brainstorm and you say, I wonder what structure fits the data that I've collected, the evidence that I've found important, the best. Step 2 to creating your structure. It's the outline. Once you decide what structure best fits what you have to say, you have to stuff your ideas into that structure. Fill in the gaps. And then if you find that you need some transition statements or that you need extra evidence, then you go hunting for that. You've probably heard about outlines before. Basically, every academic writing teacher in the world will tell you, make an outline, make an outline. But let me tell you why you need to make an outline. They're useful because they force you to have structure. Now, I don't care if you create your outline before you write your paper, during the writing at the same time, or afterwards. That doesn't matter to me, but you need an outline because if by the time you finished your paper, you are not able to fit an outline over it, chances are you don't have good structure in your paper. And if you don't have good structure in the paper, you're not going to be a successful academic writer. Now let's go back to our boat metaphor. There are basically 3 pieces to any paper. the introduction, which is like the front of the ship, the body, which is the middle, and the conclusion, which is the back of the ship. Your introduction is where you put your thesis statement. This is where you say, this is my point of view or opinion. The body is where you put all your evidence, the justifications or the rebuttal. Okay? The conclusion is where you put your recap or your summary. Interestingly enough, the two most important aspects of structure are probably the intro and the conclusion. You definitely want to structure your body correctly. You want the cargo to be nicely packaged. But in order to make sure that you create a good structure, you need an intro and you need a conclusion. That's the front of the ship and the back of the ship. It's a non-negotiable. So in the next lecture, we're going to get into the technical aspects of writing the intro.